Would like to first introduce Gabriel Gamble, who's our VP of Technology. Gabe, thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
And also a guest speaker of ours, David Mauro. David, do you want to give a little intro about yourself and your experience in security and disaster recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. I work for a North American MSSP, Konica Minolta, all covered. We provide a whole host of cybersecurity SOC services. Been in the cybersecurity space about 24 years. Have a podcast called Cyber Crime Junkies, where we interview global CISOs as well as hackers and FBI agents. The stories, the true stories, are a lot more interesting than fiction. But that's really it. I'm really passionate about it, and couldn't pick two more interesting breaches to talk about.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this combined breach is one of the biggest in ransomware history. Obviously, two really big players, and just from a case study perspective, a really interesting event to happen because two companies that are very, very similar, right, in size, revenue, their actions, and then both affected by the same attack, but then two different responses, which really gives us really painful for both the organizations, but makes it a really powerful learning opportunity for the rest of us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we want to talk a little bit about the timeline, kind of like how it played out?
I think that would be best. Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people know what happened, but maybe let's kick
Yeah.
things off. What the heck actually did happen and kind of walk through the case of events.
Yeah, so this is based on dark web research, things that we found from the hacking groups themselves, things that they're spilling, but then you don't know whether all that's true. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. But from what we can gather, it really started August 18th. So right around August 18th, Scattered Spider, and we'll talk about who they are in just a second. But they socially engineered an IT vendor of Caesars. So Caesars outsourced their help desk, it looks like, and it looks like they socially engineered them to change credentials and get them access into the account. That tactic, that vishing tactic, after doing a lot of OSINT, a lot of open source intelligence research, is a specialty of Scattered Spider. So Scattered Spider is based in the US, believe it or not, UK, and then over in the Eastern Bloc. And they are known in the industry as being ruthless, and they focus on like phishing as a service, vishing, social engineering, and the average age is between 17 and 21 years old. So very kind of a lot of bravado with them. They talk tough, but I mean they hit 5 big organizations all in the hospitality space, all in the month of August, the same way. So they're really good at what they do. So that was around August 18th. Around August 23rd, they wound up installing their malware and begin exfiltrating data, fancy word for stealing. The malware allowed them to kind of collect the key components of the data. So it looks like there was driver's licenses, social security numbers, and other sensitive PII from them, right? And then they used and leveraged ransomware. So let's keep in mind, these two criminal organizations are separate and distinct. There's Scattered Spider, and then there's Black Hat Alpha V. And Alpha V, Black Hat, is a remnant of like REvil and Conti, right? It's after those cybercrime gangs kind of fell apart, these guys kind of formed along with some new people. And then Scattered Spider leveraged their tools and their tool set in combination. Once they were in, they leveraged their expertise to move laterally and then escalate privileges. And they wound up paying their demand, the ransomware demand, the ransom note, and the communications on their Tox channel. Looks like it was 30 million. And Caesars made the painful decision to actually pay 15 million, right? Which is against what the FBI and law enforcement always say to do, right? But as many people in the industry know, that's easy to say, right? It's easy to say, just say no, right? Like, just don't do it. Meanwhile, you have a business to run, right?
Right.
And you just want it to end. So you can kind of see the human nature element of why that decision was made. Then shortly thereafter, about a week later, Okta, right, which is the access management MFA platform, they warned about a vulnerability in their system on August 31st. Okay. Shortly thereafter, a few days after, Scattered Spider, who hit, total of 5 very similar organizations that same month, they scan LinkedIn. So between September 1st and September 10th, they kind of scan LinkedIn, find an MGM employee, create a docs on the person. So do a lot of OSINT, and they create a kind of a dossier on this person, so that they know all of the security questions that would be answered. And these guys are really good. And they impersonated that person, calling the internal MGM help desk, got them to reset the employee's MGM password. And in a 10-minute conversation, they got their credentials and they were able to overcome the MFA. And then they were inside. From there, it looks like they did very similar to what they did in Caesars and the other places, all in the same month. They escalated privileges. They kept going up until they got to the super admin level of the Okta platform, where then they were able to control everything. And in Okta's warning on the 31st, they said, before you give away super admin credentials, you need to require a photo ID. Like, it's not because MFA control, identifies the device. It doesn't identify the human behind the device, right? And so the photo ID would actually tie the actual person. They didn't do that. I don't know whether they were even aware of it or not, right? But Okta, I saw the CEO got on online and was saying, we had this warning. This is the best practice, right? And they got super admin access. And then the MGM IT team actually took their systems down themselves, which I think is interesting. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about that, because that infuriates Alpha V, Black Hat. So they go in, and on the 11th is when it becomes public. That's when you start to see social media blow up, and there's so many different elements of that we can get into. But then September 12th through the 13th, Scattered Spider and Black Hat together begin negotiations with MGM. MGM's not responding. They don't respond. They're trying to get their handle on everything. Then MGM takes down their own systems to get them offline so that they can begin restoration, etc. And then Black Hat is furious. And on the 14th, they issue this manifesto. And it was really, if you guys have seen it, it's online. You can see it. It's kind of interesting because they were really upset that they didn't have the dignity to speak with them. And I can't believe they took down their own systems. They created chaos themselves. Meanwhile, these are the guys that did it, right? This is the gang. This is the criminal gang, trying to throw shade on the people that are just trying to deal with all of this. And from a lot of people I've talked to in the industry, what MGM's internal IT team did is that's a kind of a best practice, right? Is to kind of take it off. It can stop some of the spread and begin the restoration. So you guys may know more about that than I do, but it seemed like MGM actually played it pretty smart. The CEO of MGM has come out since this event and very proud of the fact that they did not, they listened to what the FBI said. They did not pay the ransom. Now we can talk about what's the difference between the two.
Yeah, right? Well, it's coincidence. I'm in the process of moving to Massachusetts, and I actually stayed at an MGM hotel during the middle of this. And
really?
So, yeah, we had booked our reservations ahead of time obviously
Yeah.
before any of this went down. And when we went in to check in, they're like, we don't know how to check you in.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to like create a new reservation for you. So we're just trusting that you did it. We're manually doing credit card numbers and running them through a separate system. And so nothing is official, nothing is on the books. Like there is no record of you being here. But we stayed at the hotel, and my mother-in-law visited us and was down at the casinos, playing the slots or whatnot. And when she'd win, she couldn't cash in. She had to actually wait for a person to come and manually give her money, like old school way, because no systems were working. And I thought, after seeing this from the inside and the outside, I just felt MGM has to be losing more than whatever the ransom would be. But at the same time, I do kind of pat them on the back, like, hey, that's a big hit to take, but way to take a stand.
Right. Because they're either going to lose X amount of funds and give it over to these criminals that are doing this and that are going to continue doing it. And now you're funding them more, or they're going to take it on the chin and just deal with it. And I think by coming out and saying we fought them because we're not going to, negotiate with terrorists, like there's a lot to be said for that. I think it was a very brave thing to do. Now, I mean, human nature is like, how often, like, think of it, all the organizations we work at, right? If there was a data breach, right? Nobody would be walking around our office with TikTok videos and taking pictures of everything that is happening while it's happening. And that's what happened to them. Like Absolutely. There were thousands and thousands of people broadcasting, hey, these guys are breached. I mean, that is like a PR nightmare. I mean, it really is.
It is.
And for them to stay strong through all that, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
It's huge actually, because the talent pool that you were just mentioning that that these crime organizations are leveraging, right? It's young, impressionable people that are honestly looking for a career, right? And each time a ransom's paid, that funds that industry. So if we can stop paying the ransoms, that's our best,
then they'll move on
I think,
to
our
other
best
things.
effort to extinguish this, right? And to stop attracting young, talented people to the bad side.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of write-ups out there on Scattered Spider if anybody wants to dive deep into who they are. But they're a group. It almost reminds me of like Lapsus in a way. Like they're these young guys. They do a lot of sim swapping. They do a lot of swatting, right? Where they're gaming with people, and then they will call like fake bomb threats essentially in, and SWAT teams will go and attack people's houses. This group apparently is pretty ruthless. They'll do that even to C-suite people of the people that they're targeting. That's a whole other level of wrongdoing.
A lot of social engineering as a part of these attacks is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well, it's you said it before, it's bravado, right? It's audacity. It's I have the power to do this, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you catch me.
Yeah.
And that gives them that anonymity to be a 20-year-old on too much caffeine, we'll say. Right.
And well funded. Like,
and
they're seeing more cash than
a lot of backup
than their parents and their grandparents have ever seen, right?
They want to turn left, they can turn left, and they got enough momentum behind them to keep them going. So it's an interesting we'll say industry at this time.
Yeah.
But I think what MGM did, although I have to say, probably very painful exercise for MGM.
Oh, it's got to be. And if you think about the revenue lost, like, first of all, you have all of the PR, you have all of the unknowns, right? The loss of productivity, the loss of morale, like all those things are hard to track, right? But that generally follows. But the public humiliation that they went through, I mean, that's very, very tough. Yeah. What we do know, or from what I can tell, is that it's the same group. The Scattered Spider group, like the people, the members, were the same ones that did it to Caesars, that did it to MGM.
Yeah.
So, so they got well funded right away. And the various reports about the damage to MGM, they kind of vary. Like at some parts we were hearing $25 million lost, but if they were down for 7 to 10 days and they generate 270 a year, which is public, right? That's 270 mil. You know what I mean? That's 10 times what was originally being.
Right. And it's the little things, like when you're at a slot and let's say there was change left over, everything was rounded up to the nearest dollar. That in itself is a loss.
Well, and yeah, the online betting, and it wasn't just the ones in Las Vegas that were down. It was all the ones all over.
The websites were all down, everything.
Right.
Yeah. Crazy. It's crazy.
Really tough.
And it's weird because you assume an organization like this has a recovery strategy that would get them back up faster.
Yeah,
and they probably do.
Right.
They probably have a strategy that says, okay, if this server fails, I can bring it back up at any point in time. But what they didn't have is the knowledge of when did this start?
Right.
And that's what kept them down so long, is they had to figure that out with absolute
before they can go back on, because otherwise they would just be taken down as soon as they went back on.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's the biggest scare, right? Because they say things like 80% of people that are hit with ransomware that pay it are hit again.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Caesars, you just paid what, $15 million? It's gonna come, they're gonna try again. Unless you can identify how they did it and make sure that you have safeguards in place. And it's just
I would hate to be an employee there and actually need your password reset, because they're never gonna believe you. Right. They're never gonna believe you.
Right.
Right. They're going to be like, whoa, we've heard this one before. We're not going to let you do it. And I'm like, I'm trying to work, man. Can you just reset my password?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very strange thing. And they've done things like, so I come from an MSP background many millions of years ago. And when you wanted to reset a password, we would say, okay, we'll reset it. And we would get off the phone with you. And then we would have to call you back with the number we have on file. Because we can't trust the number you give me. We can't trust who you are or what you're saying, right? And it was a small thing, but it's such an annoyance for the user. And that's always the balance you have is security versus ease of use. Right. And right now, security has to win. Ease of use has to go away.
That's what it's all about, right? Because it's either a matter of a slight inconvenience or a hassle, or no security. Right. And so there are some things that are really, really hard on users, right? That might have too many layers. But in general, you have to err on that, right? And I don't think today many people would object to having to have MFA on something, having to do this. I mean, it's all part of it.
I agreed. I mean, multi-factor authentication is definitely like the first step of all of this.
And it's such a basic, like to even get cyber insurance, you have to have it. So, I mean, like you would think everybody would just have it by now, but you still come across
or they have it just what they think,
or they only have it for one thing. Right.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, but once I'm in, man, and you're using the same password. So,
well, and this is the thing that I've seen with a lot of these breaches, right? Is there's an element of social engineering that happens that gets the initial access. Almost always. Look at the last Uber breach. I mean, I know Uber's been breached like 4 or 5 times, but the last one was that MFA fatigue, right? They got in, but then from there they were able to escalate privileges all the way to the source code.
Right.
The employee didn't even know he could access that, right? But and so I think a lot of organizations don't know their escalation map, right? They know what things are connected, right? They have their network map, but they don't necessarily know where all can different people access, right? Until it's too late.
Right. Yeah, it's scary to see. It's interesting to see how far we've come. But even now, you see such gaps in between the security they provide and the recovery strategy that they have, right? You go talk to a security guy on if you have a breach, what's going to happen, and then you go talk to your IT administrator or your IT team on how they're going to recover, and they are not on the same page.
Right.
And it used to be you'd walk in to do a scenario with somebody, walk them through their BCP plan or their incident response plan or whatever, and you'd talk to the different business units. and then you talk to IT on how they would facilitate that. But now there's this whole new element of, you also have to have the CISO involved in this at every stage of it. He has to be that central brain that connects all of these disparate pieces. And I just don't see companies doing that like they should.
No, I agree. You know, what's interesting too is the Scattered Spider Group, like they've been known to target IT departments, whether outsourced to a MSP or an MSSP, internal teams, and even SOCs. So they've been successful in social engineering, even SOCs. But when you think about it, think about practicing and security awareness training that goes on. How often does the IT team really pay attention to that or think, I know this stuff because of my job, right? I don't know. I think they might have tapped into a certain kind of comfort level, like they feel like they know it because they do it every day.
Right.
But, you know, they're still successful over and over and over again doing this.
Yep.
So if there's any gaps that could have been filled or better controls that were put in place by either of these companies, what do you think those could have been?
Manual processes. Any manual process is fraught with peril.
Yep.
Every time you're relying on a person to do something, that's your weakest link.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that I mean the Okta vulnerability or whatever that was, listen, I don't think that played a role. My personal opinion is I don't think that played a role here. I think they were just able to escalate privileges up to the super admin level, and it was done automatically. They didn't require any further verification. I mean, it kind of goes against the whole kind of zero trust. I mean, I know nobody really has zero trust, but the impetus is that shift toward it, right?
Right.
Meaning just as you move up the chain of, as you move vertically in an organization, you have to be re-authenticated each way, right?
Yep.
Every step.
Yep.
And that just wasn't the case here.
And policy procedure wise, you have a lot of companies that they want this set it and forget it mentality. They don't want
because everybody wants security. Yeah. They want security to come out of a box. Like they just want to be able to buy it, and there you go, as opposed to a necessary layer in an overall plan, right? Like, I'm not saying you don't need that product. I'm just saying that's one element.
But there should there should be a piece of that says, okay, you have that element. Hey, that's great. How often are you talking to them to find security updates that they have, or when Okta posted their thing? How often are you reviewing that? That should be a regular, daily, weekly occurrence that you have those emails coming to you, and you have someone that's responsible that says, this is important. I needed to get the change control done and get this applied ASAP. This is a policy change. I need to get the communication out and the training done. And those pieces are the laggards. That efficient way of change is the long straw that you see in a lot of organizations. And a lot of times, you know, NIST came out, I don't know, not too long ago and said, hey, stop changing your password. The idea to change your password every 90 days is actually a bad idea.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's like NIST. We were just talking to a group about that earlier, like, because they were like, we've been told so many different things about passwords. I'm like, you know what? If you just don't reuse a password, then you're golden. Like, because that's the biggest issue. So many people have a great password, but then they're like, okay, I'm going to use this on everything. And I'm like, dude, stop. Like, as soon as, because your data is sold anyway, as soon as somebody you don't even know gets breached, that's for sale. And now they have that great password, and they'll just do credential stuffing and get into whatever they want.
Exactly. Exactly.
There's a couple questions in the Q&A.
Yeah. I got it, David.
Okay.
Gabe, you were mentioning already, but it sounds like the things that you highlighted might have been not so much security. Obviously is a big part of this, but there's going to be bad actors trying to figure out how to infiltrate our systems. What I kind of see, based on one paying the ransom immediately and the other one taking 10 days to get back up online, is that it seems like there were gaps and holes in their disaster recovery plan or the incident response planning around operational things that should happen. Could you maybe highlight what some maybe not specifically what they were missing, but what organizations commonly overlook in incident response planning, and how to tie that together with security and backup and disaster recovery.
Yeah, I'll give you a kind of my generic example. When you're doing a disaster recovery plan with a company, and you go to the CEO and say, "Hey, how long can you be without mail?" He's going to come back and say, 20 minutes.
Right.
You go to the IT guy and say, "Hey, how long can you be without mail?" He's going to come back and say 2 days. Then you go to the security guy and say, "Hey, if mail's hacked, how long is it going to be to figure it out?" And that answer is almost always going to be as long as it takes.
Exactly.
And those 3 dates don't align. And that's the big gap. And until you guys have a plan on the security side to overcome how did this happen, because that's the key, then none of the other plans can kick into place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's making sure that that communication is done within the company, so that there's an understanding from the CEO and the IT administrators that you have to know how it happened before you can recover.
Right.
So
that's a great point. And being able to restore to that pre-breach level,
right,
is really key. I mean, it's almost like being service master, like instead of a flood,
being able to instantly boot up that unit from whenever before that incident happened is the key. You're absolutely right, David. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
so those are the big gaps that you see. And a lot of it is how the different teams communicate.
Yeah, I like that example, because that's so true, right? Like, I could pick any client, any size organization, any vertical, and go have the conversation with those 3 heads of those departments, and we would get different answers for each one.
Absolutely.
Right. And so until you get them in a room and you go, what are you guys going to decide? And then you can scope things and organize things based on that.
Right.
That's so true. Yeah.
And that's how you do your incident response plan. It's not going to the different teams and saying, how are they going to react? It's getting them on the same page.
I still find so many organizations don't have an incident response plan. Like, they just don't do them, or they don't run tabletop exercises.
Right. Or like they hand it off to somebody who has no rights to make those decisions.
Yeah. And then it's shelved. And then 2 years later, ransomware occurs, and they're like, okay, get the plan out. And they're like, hey, who does what now? Oh, Carl's supposed to do that. Oh, he left last year. Yep. So like they haven't revisited it. And so like, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
And tabletop exercises and actually running those real life simulations, I'm so surprised they're done so, like, they're not done more frequently.
Right.
Because in school, when we were kids, we all did fire drills. Yep. Right? We would all do that, because otherwise on the day of a fire, we wouldn't know to go down the hall to the left compared to the right, right? You have to know that you can't wait for the day of panic when every minute matters to be able to train people.
Exactly.
And yet we do it every day in our brands.
And then such a good analogy. You know, you were talking about, they go to the book, right? Everyone has that book. Well, I'm telling you, when you're in a disaster, the last
you're not reading. Yeah, you're not reading that book. Yeah.
It's too late. You got to know what that book says. And that means, you know, walking through the tabletop exercises are invaluable, because you don't have to take your production down to do it. You just have to talk through it so that everyone knows the decisions that will be made, and you guys will have a better chance of success.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's more conversational. It's almost like a live RACI document, right? Like, who's responsible for this event happens, okay? For the, you know, quarantining or remediation piece, like, who's responsible, who's accountable, who needs to be consulted, and who just needs to be informed, right? And then you go on to the next one, right? Like, who speaks Russian? Like, who's gonna communicate on their Talks channel? Like, do you have somebody, or are we going to be working with law enforcement and our insurer to have that negotiation piece handled? Like, you don't want to wait till that day to be contacting them for the very first time, because then the first 2 hours are going to be just them getting to know your environment. Agreed. That's not helpful.
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah.
Are there some other tasks that IT teams can perform on a daily or weekly basis to stay on top of this or to get ahead of it? And
well, we talked about the one, right? Making sure that any vendor you're using, any software you're using, that you're on that update list, and you have some kind of process in place that as soon as those things hit, you get them applied as soon as possible. It
Right.
can't be a 6-week cycle, which
Right.
is what I often see, because they wait 6 weeks and by then it's too late. You got
Yep.
3 days, I mean, tops before infiltration can happen. I mean, especially with something like that Okta thing. Once they had that, it was all done.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well, one of the questions in chat was about when manufacturers of security platforms post about a vulnerability, like then that's a haven for attackers.
Absolutely.
Is there a way around that? No. Like they have to inform the public, right? They have to inform their customers, but they also have to inform everybody, right?
Yep.
I mean, there's really
but that puts the onus on the customer to say, okay, I've been told I need to take action.
Yeah, it almost creates an immediate duty on them, right?
Exactly.
Like there's a legal duty on you not to be negligent now. You've been warned, right? Like you have to patch this. You have to fix this. Because usually, other than the case of a couple things like that one Barracuda email thing, like where they don't even have a patch that'll work. But like most things, when they make the announcement, they have the patch available, right? And so it's
you'll
have
the situation where it's like maybe a firmware piece of hardware that's the vulnerability access point, right? That's a lot harder to patch in some cases because it's part of the silicon. But there should be a workaround, and when they announce it, they're going to have a workaround. It might be an inconvenience. Hey, you got to pull that piece off the network. Yeah, but you got to do it until you can get a solution in place. And those inconveniences, while annoying, are needed for a secure environment.
Absolutely. I mean, security's inconvenient, but it's still absolutely necessary.
And then the other thing on the daily activities, a lot of people with your backup solution, your recovery solution, have a set it and forget it attitude. You can no longer have that in an IT environment. A daily check of those utilities, testing of those utilities has to be a regular thing. So even if you're bringing up one server a week just to make sure, yep, I've got a good backup, everything looks good, hey, you got to do it. If you have automated testing, all the better. But you've got to have some kind of strategy for that that's a lot more proactive than reactive, right? The old school 20 years ago, restoring a file was enough. Hey, I restored a file, my tape is good. Those days are gone. You've got to be able to recover that whole server, that whole application stack, that functionality to production in less than 10 days, which is what MGM had to face.
Right. So one of the attendees asked, what do SMBs do for incident response planning? I mean, I think it depends. There are a lot of open source resources.
Yeah.
Meaning, I don't think it's necessarily cost. Like if an SMB cares about how to protect themselves and wants to be prepared for the day of, there are numerous open source guides, things from CISA, NIST, all of these things on how to hold one, how to develop a good incident response question.
And the key feature for the SMBs, buy-in. All the different heads of your different departments, your different groups, your CEOs, your execs, they have to want this as much as you as the IT person or whatever want this. So you have to have that business unit buy-in, and that facilitates a lot of the conversation. That gets things started where if you have a guide, you have a template, now you can go through it. You're not one person trying to complete and assuming what other people are going to doing. You got to be all on the same page. And that's the key piece for SMBs really that I see is, the CFO will say, we need this, but nobody wants to get in that meeting. You got to be pushed and pushed and pushed. You got to all be on the same page.
And we're talking about inconvenience and effort, but in one of the reports, MGM Grand, where they are now admitting they probably lost around $100 million, which David already alluded to, it might be more. Also in that report, they said that they spend $10 million, on cybersecurity, consulting, legal fees, expenses. So that's a lot of money they've tried to put in ahead of time to protect themselves. For some of these SMB organizations who don't have as big a pocketbook or budget, what are is
They
it
don't have that
impossible for
attack
them to stay
vector either,
protected, or
Well,
right?
I mean,
what was that, Gabe?
I said they don't have that attack vector either. MGM being so huge, there's a
Right.
certain amount of anonymity to infiltrating an IT person. If you're an SMB, you know David in the IT department.
Right.
There's a little bit of difference there to the scale of that helps reduce that cost.
that's a great point. That's a great point. Like impersonating an employee to the IT of a SMB is probably a lot harder because they're going to be more they're going to be very familiar with all of the employees that generally call.
Right. And
But I mean,
little things like a lot of SMBs will outsource and have an MSP department where
right.
it might be an anonymous person. Hey, he's got a Dell shirt. He must be the guy.
Right.
You know, you should have a process in your company that says, hey, call the SMB, make sure this is the guy, right?
Mhm.
Those little things are incident response plans that are part of training and part of anti-phishing and all that stuff. Those are how you stop social engineering your hack, is having and knowing what to do with these and not assuming that I see, an HP logo on it, he's okay. That's not the same thing.
Yeah, and training on social engineering, test phishing, none of those are cost prohibitive for an SMB.
Absolutely.
Like it is very little. There's a whole host of no cost services out there, and then there's nominal cost for test phishing programs, doing those every month.
Yeah.
And where we struggle when we're talking to owners of SMBs is their focus is on growth, right? They want to spend their money and their investments on their own marketing and developing and building, right? And I don't blame them for that. The problem is whether you act or not, either way, you are committing to a certain scale of risk on an overall risk dial, right?
Right.
If you don't invest in it, you don't spend any time on it, guess what? That risk dial is all the way up. You are going to be exposed. And there's a whole bunch of stats about post breach, how many SMBs actually survive. And then dialing it down a little bit and spending the time really changes the trajectory of your ability to survive one of these. Because there's two different types of breaches, right? There's one where it might encrypt something, or something might be off, or something might be damaged. You have to repair something, you have to take some time and just restore. And then there are those that you have to report. You've got to contact all of the clients. You might have to file a report and be in the news, and then it's reputation. I mean,
Yep.
there was a relatively small law firm that it happened. They've been around since 1965. They had a breach. It went public, and they closed their doors. And it had nothing to do with the ability to practice law. It just had to do with clients are like, yeah, my stuff's public now. I don't want to work with you. Like that was
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Right. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And unfortunately, that was part of this breach as well, right? They've disclosed, MGM has that an undisclosed amount of personal information was breached during the attack. So
Yeah. Yeah. And keep in mind the number that they'll disclose on the SEC forms, right, will be the documentable ones,
Right.
the ones that can be verified and categorized. I think it's unfortunately going to be much higher. So the sad part of those two stories is the group that paid the criminals actually looks like they got off pretty well. Like it looks like that was a better decision, doesn't it? Like it seems like it was, and we all know it's not.
Yeah,
Right?
and that's why you're so bummed that it hurts MGM's reputation, right?
Right.
I'm sorry, ethically they did the right thing, and you're
They did.
mad for it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So hard, so hard.
So I think we
Yeah.
all, as the good guys, really got to commend them and pat them on the back, because as David said, I think right off the bat here, it's easy to say, but it can be difficult to do. So we really have to like arm in arm here. And if we can squeeze out the stopping the payments, that would just help out everybody, right? Because here was just 2 attacks. They got 1 out of 2. $15 million, I'm sure, is more than enough to encourage them to go out and do this again. So we got
Right.
to
Oh
really
yeah.
extinguish the payments if we want to lessen the
Yeah.
attacks and the efforts by the bad guys.
Yeah. And if it's true that the Scattered Spider group is kind of young and they have some resources in the States, you would think they would track them down, because they got people from Lapsus. They got the Plug Walk Joe. They caught him. He was over in London. Like they eventually hunt these guys down.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? So it'll be interesting to see. It's when you look at the arc of some of these cyber gangs, it's usually the bravado that gets them. Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like the John Gotti effect, right? You start bragging too much, you start being out there in the open, thinking you're Hollywood. Like, that is, if you want to choose the criminal life, you have to be behind closed doors. You can't be known.
Exactly.
And-
And it's the same way, right? MGM's a big name. That's why they went after you.
Right. That's why they're
You're
doing
making
it.
a big name, someone's going to go after you.
Yeah. Well, we saw that with Revel, right? Over in Russia, they were bragging, they were getting too big, right? And they just got taken down in a big public display,
Which was impressive. I mean, multinational, big display. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, there've been some great strides, and we were talking about this earlier with a group. Somebody in the audience asked, why is it that it seems like the bad guys are always winning? And I'm like, I don't think that's the case at all. Like, objectively, like, they only have to be right once. The defenders have to be right 1,000 times. And we're seeing breaches, but that's the one time they get in, right? Like, overall, there's a lot more success, but like good news and bad news and gossip, the bad news is what makes news.
Agreed. And really, it's done something that I have not seen in government in a long time, where you have now local, federal, the CIS, the FBI, the local police actually having one system and one process to go through to manage to these and to try to affect that change and save that company or save that data, or whatever the situation is, that you just don't see with any other kind of organized crime efforts.
Absolutely.
It's not about territory now. It's my jurisdiction. It's about, hey, we got to get this solved. And that's actually kind of nice to see. I mean, even internationally, it's nice to see that there's a focus being placed on this. What was it? 5 years ago, it was an $8 billion industry. Now that's what, a $27 billion industry, something like that. I mean, that's crazy. Yeah. Crazy numbers.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's the third largest GDP. That's like US, China, and then cyber crime. But it's a broad term, right? So that's a broad term.
Absolutely.
But there is more money in it than the international drug trade, which does say a lot, right? So, no, it'll be really interesting to see the pushback and the fallout from all this. I mean, it makes you wonder on the MGM side. It makes you wonder. Their CEO, when the CEO came out, was talking about how they were proud that they stuck with this and stuff. And they said at the point where they were considering deciding whether to pay or not, they felt, we have so much to do no matter what, like regardless, even if we got it all back right now, it's not going to take us any faster time to be able to restore and get this done. So I don't know what was meant by that. Right, I don't know the details, but it makes me wonder. Maybe they were just talking about all the different. I mean, their system's got to be so complex.
They probably had a good DR strategy. They probably had a way to recover. They knew what their processes were. They've practiced those. They're ready for that.
Right.
They still have to find out when did it start? How did they get here?
Yep.
And that's what is going to take the time. Whether you pay it or not, that's going to take that time.
Right.
And once you finish that, then you can recover. And I think that's probably what they were alluding to is, look, we're going to take 10 days no matter what.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised, honestly, that Caesars came up that big even after paying the ransom, because you still got to figure out how they got there and what they did. You're just leaving it open for them to do it again, or to do it a similar different thing, right?
A short-sighted reaction, right?
Yeah. So it's
Well, then think of it from the criminal's perspective, because part of this is always behavioral analysis, right? From the criminal's perspective, if I'm going to go back at either one of these, which one am I going to go after? Caesars, not MGM.
Right.
MGM didn't even negotiate with us, right? Like they didn't pay us a dime and they didn't negotiate with us, right? Caesars paid quickly. So, it's like that's a risk right there.
And you think
So-
there's any more? I know the federal government was talking about a while of deeming, malicious software a terrorist attack, so that you actually couldn't, it would make it illegal to negotiate with them, which would mean paying ransoms. Do you think there's any headway on making laws in place to kind of prevent people from paying ransoms in the future?
There are. There's OFAC, and OFAC mean under that guise, you're not allowed to pay any funds to an organization or an IP address to a banned country. Like you're not allowed to pay it, so you could be charged with treason or whatever, right? And that's part of what the FBI guides people on when that happens. But the truth is they always make it. I mean, they get around it. They're always like, just no, we're based in. I mean, they're all using VPNs. They're like, or they're all disguising their IPs anyway. So they're like, yeah, we're in London, so you can pay
Hard to
us.
prove. It's hard to
Yeah,
prove.
like how are you going to prove that? I mean, they eventually prove it, probably a year after forensics, right? But in the heat of the moment, they find ways around it, and it's always in Bitcoin or Monero.
Yeah.
Which is making it more difficult to track people down, right, with cryptocurrency, because you were saying that's a lot of the times the way we found out who the bad actors were and had a way to go after them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it just goes to show all of us can be customers of places that happens. So, like, one of the things we always tell people is to freeze your credit. Constantly freeze your credit. You can still buy things. You just press a button, unfreeze it, let them run it, and then freeze it again. But you freeze your credit, then you don't have to. And the reason we always guide people to do that is that way it's better cyber hygiene for you, for your family, for your loved ones. And then you bring that good hygiene to work, so the organization benefits, right? So it's just those types of things. And, we keep saying, like, please stop clicking on links. Please hover the mouse over the links. If you download a document by accident, please just send it all over to your IT team and just notify them. Just don't open up the document.
Look, and look at where the email came from.
Yeah. And
Like,
in the sense
if
of
it
urgency,
says, David Sims, if you click on it, you can see what the actual email address. If it's
right,
Gmail, it's not
right. It's not a real email then, right?
Don't respond.
Well,
Yeah. Or if it has like 15 consonants in the name, like that's not a real email address. Like,
one of the comments or questions was saying that after kind of countless training to their end users, they feel like that still is the biggest weakness. And a lot of times they're not thinking from an IT perspective, right? And so is there things that they can do, I guess, outside of training to strengthen or to reinforce their environments?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I mean, yes, obviously there's multi-factor authentication, there's security protocols, there's things you can do. But when your weakest link is a person and you've tested against it, you've done, penetration tests, phishing tests, that kind of thing, and you've said, hey, Bob keeps failing this. You have to go through the steps of, maybe I have to replace Bob. And that's a horrible thing to say, and I don't wish that on anybody. But between your company and one person not following your procedures, maybe that, and if this were a bank or a financial institution, it would be a foregone conclusion. You can't fail that once.
correct. Yeah, because and that's where most business, I think eventually that's where most business is going to head to, because the banking industry really kind of does it well. It's all regulated, it's all mandated. But
right.
But what's interesting in that scenario, specialized training for somebody, load him up on security trainings that he's got to do, that he's got to get certain score in order to advance, right? And what I found some groups do is to build that culture with security in mind and reward reporting. So like anything, you see something, say something. Our organization actually has prizes for people that catch or spot the most that are actually wind up to be phishing. Like you gamify it, right? You can play security Jeopardy. Like there's a free thing online. You could do this stuff and make it not so painful to go through these trainings.
Right.
If we get people to care more and realize it's not just an IT problem, it's everybody that gets online, then we all move a little bit farther up the evolution.
And a question just came in right on that. It's a really interesting point. I'll just throw it out there. They're saying a lot of this falls back on IT, but is there any way to maybe hold the employees personally more responsible who might be clicking on the email or downloading is there some action or penalties that can be put in place that would be practical and helpful?
Well, I agree with David. I'd rather have a positive reinforcement plan than a negative reinforcement plan. But if this were a bank or a financial institution and you clicked on that link, you have generated your own resume, because they cannot have you in the company when you are the weak link. And so I think that kind of mentality has to go into every company. Is that employee worth, like for MGM or Caesars, is that employee worth $15 million to you? That's the question you have to ask.
Yeah. And what are we training them on? Is it still like how to spot a fish only? Or are we training them on MFA fatigue? Are we training them on vishing? Right? Like some of these major breaches occur through vishing, right? It was social engineering by phone.
Right.
Like, are we ever role playing that? Right? Or at least even writing it out or showing them a video that, like, if you get a call that says, I need to reset my password, I'm traveling, blah, 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 you are to do X and Y. Do not give it to them. You are to do X and Y. There has to be another layer of verification of who that person is. Like,
because multi-factor authentication as a term, right? It's a great thing. I got to have something I know, something I don't. But that mentality has to go into your processes. Hey, I called in for a password. Multi-factor authentication. You got to go back to a different way and make sure this is the right person.
Well, because multi-factor authentication only authenticates the device.
Right.
Like, maybe it's not the person behind the device.
With that person, and you have their picture on file, and they map up. Or maybe it has to be something, but you got to have a process in place that is hardened, that you have tested against, and feel confident that it will meet the need to verify that person is who they say they are, and you should be, able to reset their password or give them what they need. Again, this goes back to the whole mentality of have a unique password for everything, but don't change your password, and you shouldn't run into this problem. There shouldn't be a reason to call in to reset your password. You should know it, because that's the password you've always used, and you never give it to anyone.
Yep. And we always get asked about password managers, and unfortunately LastPass had some issues, right? They had two breaches in 3 months. It looks like Password One or 1Password is having some suspicious activity. They just alerted to it, I think yesterday or today. But there's still a whole bunch of them that have not been breached. They invest a lot in their own security. And then there's algorithms you can memorize, right? You can memorize an algorithm like, Arizona #100, and then salt or pepper the data with whatever site you're logging into.
Right.
Right. Like, it's going to be a strong password. It's going to be different. And it's not written down anywhere.
Or another one I like is your password is a full sentence with space,
the phrase,
and everything. Yeah. Use a phrase. Don't use a word.
Yeah.
It's easier to remember. And if it somehow relates to what you're doing in a way that's not obvious to the outsider,
right,
all the more.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that came in was, what about passwords that are is a sentence any less secure than a random letter or some characters and symbols password?
No, it's really about length.
It's about length.
And also a question was, okay, so what if I have a really long password, and then for each thing I log into, I just change one character of it? Is that a secure practice, or is there a better option?
if I get one, I'm going to get them all.
Yeah, because the password crackers that they have, once you get breached or somebody sells your data to a data broker and they get breached and they have that, why do I have 4 kids? Question mark. Why do I have 4 kids? Why do I have 4 kids? Whatever it is, right? Then they're going to be able to run that program and do billions of combinations in seconds. Right. And so it'll go all the different variables of that. So yeah, unfortunately, it's got to be a little bit more complex than that.
And they should be unique.
Right.
Vacation 23 is probably not a great password.
No, and it's, and then we always see it, right? When these massive breaches happen and they scan the data, when all these people's emails and passwords were done, and then they look at the data, like the number one password is still like 12345, 1234556, password, admin, QWERTY. Like, no wonder we're getting pummeled.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, look, if we can focus on the basics and have positive reinforcement, I mean, it goes a long way, right?
Yeah.
And if we can get people in these security trainings that care, that they're there because they care about themselves and their families, but they'll change and they'll get better cyber hygiene, great. Reward them, right? Because when they come to work, they're going to have those same practices the way they handle work, right?
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. We're still having more questions come in, so I'll probably have to follow up with those people, but I just want to thank everybody for joining.
No, thank you.
It sounds like there's questions about disaster recovery planning, incident response planning, and security. It's a multi-layered approach, and we're happy to discuss and help on each of those areas. So I'll follow up with people that had like specific security questions or call to action and see if we can help out there. Thanks to everyone for joining, and David, Gabe, thanks for leading a really interesting conversation. I really appreciate it.
Glad to help.
Yep. Glad to help. Our pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
See ya.